My lows of bliss and happiness and joy are much higher than they've ever been in my life. Yeah. But I know the highs could be higher and more consistent. And it's just finding joy in small things. And when you're a big achiever, you have to be very careful that you only link your bliss and happiness to big things. And the truth is, it's like right now being with you. Like right when I saw your face, like it brings me joy. Simple things are actually ironic, or what bring me the most happiness and the most joy. When you really get after something, listen to me, total immersion in something, you can become unbelievably proficient at it. That guy who's thinking about quitting, he's not totally immersed. Yeah. He's not totally in. Let me give you an example real quick. My dad's got cancer. You know that. Grant knows it. My dad has something called liposarcoma. I think Dad's okay with me saying that now. 3 years ago, if you'd have said the word liposarcoma to me, I have no clue what the hell that means. I'm not an oncologist. I know nothing about cancer, right? All of a sudden, it became important to me. I became completely immersed in the topic of liposarcoma. I know what causes it, what treats it, what you die from it, how it doesn't grow, you name it, right? I'm not a cancer doctor, but I know a ton about that topic because it became so freaking important to me. If you really want to win, you'll get unbelievable at getting people to believe you believe it. You will be loaded with certainty from product knowledge to belief to skills, and you will be completely immersed with, I believe, no B plan. No other plan, no nothing out, completely immersed in it. Aside from dunking a basketball or hitting a 100-mile-an-hour fastball, these are things that are limitations to human beings. But average, ordinary people every single day succeed in the business of persuading people. There is no limitation to you being able to do it except those things. First off, knowledge isn't power. It's potential power. And it's only powerful when it's applied, as you've said. I actually think the separator for people who apply and don't apply is ego. I really think I don't know everything. I really do want to learn. I do have a level of humility about most things, that I'm a student all the time. And when I look at a guy like you, and I was listening to all the things you're talking about in your career and how aware you are, and frankly, how candid you are about things you wish you did differently, it takes a ton of humility. And so I think if you're not applying things, you need to look at yourself and decide whether your ego's involved. You'd say, well, no, I'm just afraid. Ego is fear. Ego applies itself in lots of different ways, but probably the fact that you're not applying what you're learning is ego related in some way. You can't be happy if you don't love yourself. And you can't love yourself if you're not being yourself. If you can begin to live in congruence with your values, your beliefs, and find a way to serve other people, that's always a pathway to your own bliss, to your own happiness. Yeah, for me, I figured it out a little bit later in life. I used to think, well, I want to be rich, and I do. I think having material things to some extent can give you temporary happiness, and certainly be able to feed your family and provide education for your family. That's an important thing. But I found out finally in my life, you know what really gives me joy? Gives me joy is to help other people, is to serve other people. One thing I think that's not said enough in the world, and since we only have a little bit of time, is I want everyone to understand this. You were born to do something great with your life. You were. Every single human being was born to do something special with their lives. And the two best days of your life is the day you're born and the day you figure out why. And when you figure that out, and it'll be a pathway. If you're listening to this, you want to be happier, begin to think about some of your natural gifts, things that you're good at, that you enjoy doing. How could you use those in the service of other people? I promise you that's the pathway to you being a happier person. I love the book by my brother Evan Carmichael, Built to Serve, you guys. This is the kind of thing you get in this book. Most people wake up and drive to a job they hate. Think about your 5 closest friends. Are they happy? Do they live their lives with purpose? Do you? We put on a fake front for what we want people to see and think about us, but the reality is most people aren't happy. We're lost. We settle. You can't be happy if you don't know your purpose. And then he goes on to explain how to do that. You guys should get this book, Built to Serve, by my dear friend Evan Carmichael. Written so eloquently about this for everybody. That started with you acknowledging and realizing a pattern. Yeah. So we have these patterns of behavior, right? And so when you acknowledge a pattern you have that does not serve you, it loses a lot of its power over you just by you seeing it, being aware of it. Like, for example, in business for me, usually when I'm doing well, there's this really intense version of me. I don't always like that guy, but man, does he produce a lot of results. And I'm back sort of in the hunt in a lot of my business in such a way, and that guy's sort of re-emerging. And I've asked and there's this part of all of us that think that's why I'm successful. So if I took this intensity away, or I took this self-doubt away, or I took this anxiety away, I'll lose my mechanism to achieve. We all think this. It's complete BS. We think that's part of our secret recipe, when in fact, brother, and you've realized this too, you're in a more blissful relationship now, that you were succeeding in spite of those patterns, not because of them. And what they are is they become part of your identity. So you think that's why they produce these results, but you're winning instead of them, in spite of them. And so for me, just when they rear their head, I'm like, I'm doing that stupid pattern again. Here I go again. And it loses some of its power over me. And so you're 1,000,000% right. And that's why I feel such optimism about my life, is because I kind of know me. So I know when I'm doing that guy. Here he goes, the worrying me. Here he goes, the overreacting me. You're doing it again. And it's almost like a clown show when I do it, instead of me going, well, that's why I win. I mean, hey, you may not like that guy, but man, he became a millionaire.
Completely convince you of everything I'm saying. I'm trying to convince you that I believe what I'm saying. So I think there's a subtle difference when you're influencing people. People think to close you, I have to convince you to believe everything I'm saying. I don't believe that's true. I think I have to convince you that I believe what I'm saying. Right. That's a totally different level of influence. It looks less like a beggar. It looks far more certain, which is level 2. Level 2 is the more certain person will always influence the least certain person, and you know your product. So you should be more certain about it than they are, or your program. So a couple things about that. All kinds of things give you certainty, okay? Number 1, preparation. Knowing your script, knowing your product back and forth, believing in your product back and forth, knowing that you know the words, knowing you know what you're going to say it's a dance. This is very interesting to me when people struggle at sales. There's only like a certain amount of objections you're going to get in whatever your industry is. You already know what they're going to say. It's one of 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 different things. You ought to be ready to respond to them. So most people in sales are professional presenters. They're not professional closers. So they're great at their presentation. They can't close. And so I got really good at closing, because someone's going to close somebody. Either you're going to close me, you shouldn't, or I'm going to close you that you should. And so the more certain person's going to win. If you just want to accept that truth, that one, you got to believe that I believe what I'm saying, not that you believe. People buy things all the time and say yes to things all the time that they don't necessarily believe everything about. They believe the person presenting it to them believes it. That's a different level.
You deserve to be successful. This isn't relegated to people different than you. I used to think, who are these people that live in these beach houses and have these jets or play on TV in a sport? They're like a different species or something. And as I've got to know them all from doing my show and just from living my life, they're just like you in many ways. They're just human. They have the same emotions, the same weaknesses and whatnot. But here's the deal, man. Your life, you're probably never going to exceed your identity. And that your identity is the thoughts and concepts that you believe to hold really to be true about yourself. And you have multiple identities. You have a happiness one, a wealth one, a fitness one, a relationship one. And you will never, temporarily, you could get a better result than what you believe you're worth, but you'll find a way to cool it back down. Your identity is like that thermostat on the wall. It sets the temperature for your life. So if you're a 75 degree, or let's just say of wealth, and you live at 75 degrees, you might get it going for a while in business and you're living at 80, 85 degrees, but all of a sudden the thermostat of your life will kick in unconsciously and you will find a way to cool it right back down. Reverse is true too. You start going broke, you can't pay your bills. You'll find a way eventually, don't you? You didn't starve, you didn't get homeless, you heated your life back up to what you think you're worth. And it governs your life. It doesn't matter the external conditions. If you have a thermostat in this room, 100 degrees outside, it'll still regulate this room to 75. And so your identity is a thermostat of your life. And if you don't change the thoughts, concepts, and worth you hold to be true about yourself, all of the other mechanical things you do, you will find a way. Most Hall of Fame athletes simply have a higher identity about their craft and their career. Most high performers in fitness, high performers in a relationship, people in faith, their faith. You see someone just lives with great faith. They've got 150 degrees of faith. And so they get that no matter what the conditions are. There's a woman on my show today, Tony, who was the mother of a 5, 4, and 2-year-old, Kayla Stockline. Her husband was pastor of a church. He hung himself last year in their church, committed suicide, and left 3 children behind and a loving wife and a church full of people. And on my show, she says that the last year, her faith has only increased and she's closer to God. How in the world is that possible? It's because no matter what the conditions of her life is, she's got this gigantic faith identity. So my thing I'd go back and tell me is, you better work on this identity thing all the time. You better keep working on it, or you will find a way to cool your life back down in every area to what you think you're worth and what you think you deserve.
Comparison is a formula. That's why social media is so dangerous. Comparison is a formula for misery. And what we do in our life is we compare ourselves to the best day and the best picture on social media that we see of somebody else. We compare ourselves at different times in our lives too. You know, even if you're in a relationship, comparing your relationship in its 5th year to its 5th week isn't fair to that relationship. There's different stages in our life. So comparison is a pathway. There's pathways to happiness, and there's pathways that lead us to unhappiness. One of those for sure is comparison, and it's an ego thing oftentimes with us. We're always trying to one-up things in our life. It's a matter, I think, really of being more present in the moment in your life and saying, I deserve to be happy right now. People's will to win is easily bought in life. And it's bought 2 ways. He and I have talked a lot about this. He keeps telling me to write this book, but you got to just ask yourself in advance. Here's what people do all the time in business and life, okay? They're constantly negotiating the price they're paying. They're in constant negotiation in their mind. Is this worth it? Can I go through anymore? I don't know. It's so hard. They're constantly negotiating the price. This zaps your energy. It zaps your certainty. It zaps everything from you. If you're going to win, negotiate in advance that you will pay any price required, that you are not for sale, as long as it's legal, ethical, and moral. Once you've done that, when I was poor, I'd walk into stores all the time. I wouldn't buy what I wanted because I was poor. I'd be flipping price tags over. What's it cost? What's it cost? What's it cost? Now, I wouldn't get what I wanted. I'd get what I could afford, right? I'd negotiate the price. Okay, if you do that in your life, you'll eventually be bought. You will either be bought by failure because it's just too big a price, or worse. This is the one he's talking about. You're bought by some level of success. You get some price tag, they give you your number, and they buy your will to win, and you stop getting after, you stop going to the next level. Both are insidious. The obvious one is people who just sell out their will when they're failing. The other one is for the people in here that, oh, wow, now you're at 250 grand a year. Oh, wow, now you hit your big number, you're at $1 million, and your will was bought. If you really size up the really top level at anything, they can't be bought. It's like the heavyweight champion. How many guys? It's one thing to win a title. I coach a lot of UFC guys. One thing to win a title, totally different deal, man, to repeat and to repeat again and to repeat again and to repeat again and to go win in another weight class and another weight class. That's a whole different deal. It's one thing to win a Super Bowl. A lot of guys that won a Super Bowl, totally different deal to win 5 like Brady. Totally different deal to win 6 like Jordan, right? Totally different deal. Their will to win could not be bought by the losses or the wins. This is the separator from the best at anything. I want you to write this down. I need you to embrace the suffering. You know, there's something powerful that once you just sort of embrace the fact that in order to achieve something big, you've got to get rid of these distractions. And then the other layer of it is you're probably going to have some suffering to get there, or some sacrifice to get there. And so once you've embraced and decided that this suffering, this sacrifice you're making is an indicator of progress. It's an indicator of obsession. Suffering and sacrifice and hard work is an indication of progress towards our dreams. The lack of sacrifice, the lack of suffering in our lives, its removal, its non-existence also equates to a non-existence of a great life, a non-existence of a dream happening, a big one anyway. And so embrace the fact that you're going to have to sacrifice and suffer to some extent. Once you've embraced that it's going to happen, it's almost not that bad. It's kind of like those of you that are fit. We already know, and you already know even if you're not, you've sort of accepted that before you go to the gym and get there, you're going to have to suffer. And we go anyway. It becomes a habit. No one goes into a gym thinking, I'm not going to have to sacrifice or suffer. There'll be no discomfort or no pain. But millions of people go anyway, don't they, to the gym? On some level, they're suffering in the gym, whether it's breathing heavy or sweating or aches or pains or stress. You know, everything in the gym is a sacrifice, and to some extent, you're suffering, going through some pain. You know it before you go, don't you? Yet most of us go all the time. Yet in life, outside of that one area, most of us are worried about suffering. We're afraid of it. When we're suffering and sacrificing, we wonder whether it's worth it. We wonder whether we're supposed to. We wonder whether sacrifice or setbacks or suffering is a sign it's not our real dream, don't we? See, at the gym, you'd never think, oh, I'm going through some pain and discomfort. This must be a sign I shouldn't be at the gym. You'd never think that. It goes with the territory. Everyone knows this. Build a bicep or a tricep or a chest or legs. You have to break it down, suffer and sacrifice for it to grow. So while it's happening, there's no part of you that says this isn't right. In fact, the indication of the pain and sacrifice and sweat, don't you feel better at the gym? You're like, wow, I really sacrificed today. I really suffered. So in that area, we all know to the extent we suffer and sacrifice is to the extent we grow. And your body is a metaphor for the rest of your life. But the rest of our life, every time we sweat, every time we sacrifice, every time we suffer, we don't do what we do at the gym. We start saying, well, wait a minute. Maybe I'm not supposed to be doing this. Maybe I'm not cut out. Maybe it's not my destiny. Maybe I just can't do it.